Due to changes made in the recent patches, we found ourselves in quite the unique meta. Because teleport is being used on 3 separate roles right now, oftentimes we're seeing the champions that are popular in those roles being flexed into other roles. As a result, the game has fallen into what is called a flex pick meta at the highest tiers of play. Flex pick metas are something that also exist in pro play, but for an entirely different reason. In organized pro play, flex picks are something that are used early on into the draft in order to prevent a counterpick from happening. This forces the enemy team into picking something safer as opposed to resorting to a counterpick. Now you yourself can still use it for this purpose, but the best way for you to be using it is to avoid the detriment that is autofill. We've all had it happen to us before. You get into champion select, you got your main role, mid lane, awesome. But your top lane says, autofilled, prefer mid, I can't really play top. Right from that point, you already know that your chances of winning have significantly decreased. But by practicing flex picking, you're able to play a completely different role without having to learn the new genre of champions that goes with that role. On top of this, it will be very hard for the enemy team to counterpick you, meaning that you're going to be finding yourself in favorable matchups more often than not. This is why a counterpick meta is always usurped by a flex pick meta. If you don't know who is going to what lane, it's not possible to counterpick them. Before we get too far into the video, I want to remind you to check out our website, GameLeap.com. There we have hundreds of videos all done by challenger players sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. Now, without further ado, let's get into how you can use flex picks in order to make the most of your champion select. Now, there are 2 main reasons why you should be using flex picking specifically. The first reason is so that you can fill to a role that you don't normally play without being a detriment to your own team. Now, the reason why you're filling doesn't really matter. It can be either because of autofill or just you biting the bullet for somebody else that was autofilled. Both are okay. The main idea here is that you pick a champion that you would normally play in your main role and you just play it in a different role. It's that simple. Now, I know this might seem obvious to a lot of you, and some of you might be thinking, well, doesn't take a genius to figure that one out, Panther, what the heck? And while granted, yes, it is a very simple concept and maybe a tip that you've heard before, I do want to go over some guidelines because oftentimes I do see some really weird picks in alternate lanes that they just shouldn't be in, and it's not a good flex pick to be making. So let's go over 3 quick and simple rules to determine whether or not you should flex something into a different lane. Now the first rule is something that should apply to all of your ranked play in general, and this is, can you play the pick? Now, it does not matter if Swain is the best flex pick in the game and can be played top lane, mid lane, and ADC. If you can't play Swain, you shouldn't be flex picking it. While yes, current standard flex picks like Irelia and Aatrox are really good, it doesn't matter how good they are if you can't play them. It is better to play a non-standard flex pick that you can play than a standard flex pick that you can't play. And so the next 2 rules will determine whether or not your non-standard flex pick will work. Rule number 2, can the pick perform the task that it needs to perform? For example, a support like Karma can be flexed into the mid lane because she's able to hold her own in a solo lane while still maintaining wave clear and providing utility for the team. A very similar support, however, Nami, would not be able to be flexed mid lane as she does not have the wave clear or trading potential to be able to survive in the mid lane. A different example would be that you can flex a pick like Jax into the jungle. However, a different bruiser, Alawi, would be trolling if you picked her to jungle. Jax is able to clear the jungle and gank, while Alawi is not able to do either of these things. It does not matter how many games you have on a certain champion, if it cannot perform the tasks that it needs to perform in that role, it's not going to work. You could have 10,000 games on Janna, but it still wouldn't make playing Janna jungle a smart thing for you to do. Now the last rule, and this is the one that is overlooked the most, is will the pick mesh well with your team? You could have an S tier flex pick that you're able to play, but if it doesn't work with your team comp, your chances of winning are going to drop severely. For example, I want to share with you one of my favorite flex picks to make, and that is Renekton mid. Renekton is my most played champion in the game, and oftentimes I will flex him into the mid lane, as he can hold his own in a solo lane and still provides wave clear and pressure in the mid lane. This makes him a viable flex pick. However, it doesn't mean that every time I get mid lane, I'm going to lock in Renekton mid. I need to make sure that it's going to work with my team before I lock this in. For example, if the rest of the team plans on drafting AD, I can't lock in Renekton mid because that will result in a full AD team. Now, as long as these 3 rules are fulfilled, you can play anything, anywhere. This is why strange flex picks like solo lane Pyke and on hit Nico work. As long as the pick follows the rule, it doesn't matter how outlandish it sounds. Remember, you're always going to see better results if you flex something that you play a lot of into a lane that it's not normally played into than if you play something meta from that lane. Now let's move on to the second reason why flex picks are used, and this is to gain an advantage in champion select. A lot of people are still utilizing counterpicking in champion select. This is because if you are able to win your lane early on into the game, you have a higher chance of winning the game in itself. Counterpicking will oftentimes give you a winning lane phase on top of the fact that you will inherently beat whatever champion that you are using the counterpick for. By understanding this fact, you can use flex picking in order to trick the enemy team into picking what they might think is a counterpick. For example, one of the most popular flex picks in the game right now is Irelia. Now, when you see Irelia first picked by the enemy team, typically you're going to think that that is Irelia top lane. You might respond to this Irelia top pick by picking something like Poppy, Kled, or Tryndamere. It's the enemy's turn to pick again, and suddenly they lock in Malphite. Wait a minute, that's Irelia mid, and now you're playing Tryndamere into Malphite top. Not a good matchup. You can see that in the span of just 30 seconds, you went from feeling really good about your laning phase to absolutely dreading it. Now this is exactly what you are looking to abuse when you utilize flex picks for yourself. You don't need to be able to play every single flex pick in the game. Oftentimes 1 or 2 will be enough. If you are able to master 1 or 2 flex picks, then oftentimes you're not going to have to worry about being counterpicked nearly as much. Also keep in mind that mastering the classic flex picks allows you to play lanes that you normally wouldn't be able to play without those picks. You can also use flex picks in order to draw out something that is perceived as a counter pick. Remember that most counter picks are not safe to be picked blind. As a result, you will oftentimes be able to draft an absolutely brutal counter pick for yourself. Now this strategy, just like countless others I've given you on this channel, will always work better when duoing. If you are able to duo with somebody who wields a flex pick that is able to flex into the same roles that your flex pick flexes into, then this will make your flex pick so much more potent. This will allow you to freely swap with your duo into whichever lane setups are the best for you. For example, if you are an Irelia main and your duo is a Vladimir main, this will allow either one of you to play top or mid, depending on which matchup is best for both. On the other hand, if you are a Yasuo main and your duo is a Swain main, then you can effectively flex across 3 roles, top, mid, and ADC. This allows you to take whatever role is best for you and cover for any autofill players in those specific roles. I'm sure that you're starting to see that flex picking, when used properly, is one of the most effective tools in the entire game and gives you a massive advantage even from champion select. Now, of course, the meta flex picks are always going to be more potent than something that is non-meta that you are flexing because you main it. This should not, however, discourage you from flexing something non-meta as long as it fits the 3 rules mentioned earlier. Flex picking is something that should be utilized by all players, a tool that everyone has in their arsenal. On top of that is a fantastic way to learn a new role that you might have been itching to learn, or to play with players that you normally wouldn't be able to. You can use flex picking to duo with your friend that mains the same role as you. While it is a simple tool, at its core the applications are absolutely endless, and it's definitely something that I want to introduce you to so that you can use it for yourself to increase both your success and your enjoyment of the game. It's a way to both increase your success in solo queue and to try something new that you might have been wanting to try. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it is also something that pro teams do all the time, and it is something that I am sure we will be seeing at Worlds, which is coming up soon. My challenge to you guys is for the next pro game that you watch the pick and ban. Try to determine whether or not the teams are utilizing a flex pick in the early draft. This is something that is really fun for me, because the more you think about pick and ban phase, the more complex you see that it actually is. Pick and ban is my personal favorite part of League of Legends simply because it's entirely a mind game. I hope this video helped you see just how important pick and ban phase is by giving you one of the most important strategies for pick and ban phase. If you have been enjoying all of our content up until this point, I would highly recommend checking out our website GameLeap.com. There we have hundreds of videos done by challenger players, all sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. We have courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses. Check it out using the link in the description below. As always, I hope you learned something valuable, and I will see you in the next one.